The first time he opened his eyes, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. For 8 long months, the machines had hummed louder than hope. The monitors had blinked in steady rhythm while doctors whispered statistics that sounded more like farewells than forecasts. The man in the bed had been called powerful, untouchable, a titan of industry. But in that silent hospital room, he was simply a body suspended between this world and the next. And the only person who spoke to him like he could still hear was a 26-year-old nurse who had nothing in this world but her tired hands and a stubborn belief in kindness. Before we step deeper into this story, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet power of compassion. Stories like this deserve to be heard. Her name was Aisha Rahman. She worked the night shift at a private hospital that catered to the elite. The polished marble floors reflected chandeliers that cost more than her family's entire house. The rooms smelled of antiseptic and expensive perfume. Most patients were surrounded by visitors in tailored suits, lawyers, assistants, and relatives who spoke about business even at the bedside. But not room 407. Room 407 belonged to Arman Qureshi, a self-made millionaire whose name appeared in magazines and business forums. He had built a technology empire before turning 45. Newspapers once described him as brilliant but ruthless. 8 months earlier, a severe car accident had left him in a deep coma. Surgeons had saved his body. They could not wake his mind. In the beginning, the room had been crowded. Executives came with flowers. Distant relatives came with rehearsed sorrow. Lawyers came with documents. But as weeks turned into months, the visits thinned. Eventually, they stopped. All that remained were the machines, the faint scent of disinfectant, and Aisha. Aisha did not come from wealth. She grew up in a 2-room house on the outskirts of the city, where electricity outages were common and dreams were often postponed. Her father had died when she was in nursing school, leaving behind debts and a grieving mother. Her younger brother had abandoned his studies to work at a mechanic shop. Every month, Aisha sent most of her salary home. She could have chosen easier assignments. Some nurses avoided long-term coma patients. There was no conversation, no gratitude, no visible progress. But Aisha always volunteered for room 407. Every night, she bathed him. She would warm the water carefully, test it on her wrist, and begin the slow routine. She cleaned his face, combed his thick dark hair, shaved his beard so it wouldn't grow wild. She spoke softly as she worked, not because she expected an answer, but because silence felt cruel. She told him about her day. About how the cafeteria tea tasted like boiled regret. About how her mother's arthritis had worsened. About how the city lights looked beautiful on her bus ride home at dawn. She told him stories about her childhood, about climbing mango trees, about studying under candlelight. Some of the other nurses laughed at her gently. They said she was wasting words on someone who would never hear them. But Aisha believed something different. She believed that even if the mind was sleeping, the soul might still be listening. There were nights she felt foolish. Nights when exhaustion pressed against her bones and doubt crept in. The doctors had been clear, the chances of meaningful recovery were slim. Brain scans showed minimal activity. Family members had quietly discussed withdrawing certain expensive treatments. One evening, Aisha overheard 2 board members in the hallway discussing the cost of maintaining a vegetative billionaire. The phrase stung her. It reduced a human life to a financial inconvenience. That night, while bathing him, she felt tears slip down her cheeks. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed even though no one was there to see. She leaned closer and whispered that she did not know who he had been before the accident. She did not know if he had been kind or harsh, generous or distant. But in this room, he was simply a man fighting a battle no one could see. And she would not give up on him. Outside that room, Aisha's own life was unraveling. Her mother needed an expensive surgery. The hospital delayed her overtime payments due to administrative issues. Her landlord hinted at increasing rent. There were days she considered quitting and seeking a higher-paying job abroad. Yet every night, she returned to room 407. One stormy evening, lightning flashed across the city skyline. Rain lashed against the tall windows. The hospital felt unusually quiet. Aisha was alone in the room, gently washing Armin's hands. His skin felt warmer than usual. She paused. The monitors beeped steadily, but something was different. His fingers twitched. At first, she thought it was involuntary movement. She had seen reflexes before. But then it happened again, stronger this time. His eyelids fluttered. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She leaned closer, whispering his name, not too loud, not too soft. The storm outside seemed to grow louder, as if the sky itself were watching. And then, slowly, impossibly, his eyes opened. They were unfocused at first, clouded and confused. But they were open. For a moment, Aisha froze. She had imagined this scene 1,000 times, but now that it was real, her body felt numb. She pressed the emergency button, calling for doctors, but she did not look away from him. His gaze moved slowly, as if searching through fog. It landed on her face. In that instant, something passed between them. Not recognition exactly, but awareness. He blinked, struggling. His lips parted slightly. No sound came out, but tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. The room filled with staff within seconds. Doctors shouted instructions. Machines were checked. Tests were ordered. The storm outside continued to rage, but inside room 407, a miracle was unfolding. Over the next days, the hospital buzzed with disbelief. Medical journals were consulted. Specialists were flown in. Armin Qureshi, the millionaire many had quietly written off, had regained consciousness. Recovery was slow. He could not speak at first. His muscles were weak from months of immobility. But his mind was returning. What shocked everyone was the first word he managed to whisper after days of therapy. It was not a relative's name. Not a business associate. Not a lawyer. It was Aisha. The doctors assumed he had read her name badge during his brief moments of awareness. But he shook his head weakly. Through broken speech and tears, he explained that he had heard her voice for months. It had floated through darkness like a thread of light. When everything else was silent, her stories had anchored him. Her words had reminded him of the world outside. He described dreams where he was lost in a vast ocean, unable to move. And in the distance, he would hear someone speaking about mango trees, about candlelight, about hope. He had followed that voice. The staff listened in stunned silence. For Aisha, the revelation felt overwhelming. She had spoken out of instinct, out of empathy. She had never imagined her words could travel into the depths of unconsciousness. As weeks passed, Armin regained strength. Physical therapy sessions were grueling. His once powerful body trembled with simple movements. He faced frustration, anger, and vulnerability. The empire he had built was being managed by others. Decisions were made without him. Some investors doubted he would ever return to leadership. But something inside him had shifted. Before the accident, he had lived in boardrooms and private jets. He measured life in profits and expansions. He had little time for family gatherings, fewer for charity. He had convinced himself that success justified everything. Lying in that bed, dependent on others for the most basic needs, stripped him of illusion. And hearing Aisha's stories while trapped in silence had changed him in ways he struggled to articulate. One afternoon, months after he first opened his eyes, he asked to see Aisha outside the routine checkups. She felt nervous entering his room now that he was fully awake. The power dynamic had returned. He was once again the wealthy businessman. She was still the nurse from a modest background. But his expression was different. Softer. He told her he remembered feeling alone in the darkness. He remembered regret more than anything else. Regret for missed birthdays, for harsh words, for people he had dismissed as insignificant. And in that emptiness, her kindness had been the only constant. Aisha listened quietly. She did not see herself as extraordinary. She had simply done her job. Weeks later, an announcement shook the hospital. Arman Qureshi had decided to step down temporarily from active business operations. In his place, a new foundation would be launched under his name, focused on funding long-term care for coma patients and supporting families who could not afford extended treatment. The board was shocked. Some investors were displeased. But he was firm. The first major donation went to the hospital's underfunded general ward, not the private wing. Equipment was upgraded. Staff salaries were reviewed. A special fund was created for nurses seeking financial assistance for family medical needs. Aisha was called into the administrative office one morning, fearing she had made some mistake. Instead, she was handed documents approving full financial coverage for her mother's surgery. She tried to refuse. Pride and disbelief tangled inside her. But the hospital director explained that it was not charity. It was recognition. Arman never framed it as repayment. He often said that no amount of money could equal the nights she had spent speaking life into silence. The true miracle was not just that he woke up. It was that he changed. Months later, he walked slowly but steadily through the general ward, no cameras, no press. He stopped beside beds of patients who had no visitors. He spoke to them gently. He funded research into neurological recovery. He visited rehabilitation centers quietly. Aisha continued her work, still choosing night shifts sometimes, still speaking softly to those who could not answer. But now she carried something new, the certainty that even unseen kindness has weight. The story spread quietly through the hospital halls. It was not a headline-grabbing scandal or a dramatic courtroom battle. It was something quieter. A reminder that compassion can reach where medicine sometimes cannot. And before we close this story, if it has touched your heart even slightly, please take a moment to like, comment, and share it with someone who needs to believe in hope again. Your engagement helps stories like this travel further than we ever can alone. If you truly believe that small acts of kindness can create life-changing miracles, comment the word hope below. Years later, when people asked Arman what saved him, he did not speak about the surgeons or the advanced machines, though he was grateful for them. He spoke about a young nurse who refused to treat him like a lost cause. He spoke about warm water, gentle hands, and stories about mango trees. In a world that often celebrates power and wealth, the real miracle had been something far simpler. A tired nurse with nothing but faith in kindness. And a voice that refused to give up on the silent.